we have no idea how much is out there that we don't know.
I just don't understand how you could have creation without creator.
Exactly.
I mean, because it goes against the law of the natural existence, right? I mean, anything that you look at is created for something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree.
The thing that struck me about it was, and I'm 44, there was no traditional TV, media, anything. This was the first time that we saw a massive national, international event happen, and it was completely uncovered or completely broadcast via social media and people with their phones.
I think the reason why Charlie Kirk is getting so much coverage is because he was a polarizing, outspoken figure. I think that it's time to take a step back and just to reflect on the fact that he was a human being that didn't deserve to be killed, regardless of his political leanings, regardless of his philosophies, regardless of the things that he said that may have been objectionable.
To say we're all equal in our capacity is just absolutely, I think, a lie, because not everybody's made to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's made to be a salesperson. Some people just want to break rocks, and they're happy doing that. And I think what it is when we look at somebody like Charlie Kirk and why it's such a massive impact is, or why we put the value on it, so to speak, or the attention on it, Len, is exactly that word, value. This person, I think, was such a high person, individual, human being of value. And what I mean by that is not to diminish anyone's value, because I know we live in a world of hypersensitivity where we're like, everyone's equal. I wish we would stop saying that, because it's a freaking lie, dude. Everyone is not equal. We're not. To say we're all equal in our capacity is just absolutely, I think, a lie, because not everybody's made to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's made to be a salesperson. Some people just want to break rocks, and they're happy doing that. We are confusing children so much today with this shit. Sorry, I said it twice, and I don't want to say it, but we are confusing children so much with this crap today.
Gun ownership and cars are a right. They're not a privilege. They're a privilege. They're not a right. And I think that each person who has some type of deadly weapon, vehicle, whatever, should go through a rigorous set of examinations or some type of hurdles to be able to get access to that. I'm sorry, not everybody that has a gun should have a gun.
You need to go in for your gun. You need to re-register. You need to get re-registered. I'm sorry, dude, but guess what? It makes sense, because you know what? 5 years ago, I had a perfect marriage, and today I caught my wife cheating, and I'm in a mental state where I want to murder somebody, and I have a gun.
I think that we definitely need to have a revolution in thought and in conversation and in also coming together as a country, because what's happening right now is all of these polarized camps are getting more and more entrenched in their polarization, and both sides are responsible. Both sides have blood on their hands. Both sides have some reconciliation. And I think the only way that we can begin to heal is to first acknowledge that we have some wrongdoing in this process.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
All right, awesome. Well, back again here. It is Monday, the 15th of September. I can't even already believe that it's the middle of September. I'm looking at the dates right now, and I just don't even understand what's going on with the time or how fast things are going. And I don't want to hear about the cliche either, because there's always a cliche for something. And it's like, well, the older you get, there's the more time seems shorter. And then we talked about that, though, right? We talked about because
it's not cliche, but it's true. But you're right. A lot of people talk about that. But yeah, man, I remember January like it was yesterday, man. And it's crazy how quickly the month is going. It's already the 15th of September, man. It's crazy.
I just kind of almost like sometimes think that maybe Elon Musk is right. He went to he was just recently at a conference, and he was speaking at a conference, and he was talking. He's like, and one of the questions they came up with is, "Are we in a simulation?" Right? Mm-hmm. it's like that's been a popular topic of conversation for quite a long time now. For a lot of people, is they're debating on whether or not we're in a simulation or not. And it's like, I don't know, Len. What do you think? Are we in a simulation?
You know, the obvious answer for me is no, but I think that it requires for us to really take an in-depth look at all different possibilities. And I think that goes back to the whole Matrix movie, right? This idea that we are a part of something that we're really not a part of. And if we take the blue pill, we have one existence. And if we take the red pill, we have a different existence. And the reality is that I'm of the belief that times are changing and our existence is starting to evolve as a country. And because of that evolution, it just makes you think about and question everything. And so that's where I think we really are more than anything. How about you, man? What are your thoughts about it?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a very logical, very scientific purpose. And obviously, I mean, my background is technology. I've been on a computer since I was 6 years old. I love sci-fi. I love all that kind of stuff. So for me, I would think that, oh man, that'd be cool. But I'm a very spiritual person, and Len, I've gone on missionary work, and I've had a lot of spiritual growth too. A lot, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. So for me, I can absolutely unequivocally say no, we're not in a simulation, just simply because of my spiritual, not beliefs, but my feelings, right? So I guess the answer is that when you have a spiritual awakening and you have a spiritual connection, you have a spiritual feeling. You no longer, I have my spiritual beliefs, because I don't think you believe anymore. I think you feel, and I think you belong. You understand now at that point. So for me, no, I don't think we do. Now, if I take that filter out of my life and I just look at it scientifically, I could see how it's easy to think that or believe that or feel that, just simply because there's a lot of scientific evidence that could really point towards that being factual or that being the case. Just like there's a lot of scientific evidence that points to the theory of evolution in regards to man came up from, primates and all those different types of things like that. But I always go back to the understanding of, which is what I think it's scientifically proven to some degree. I don't know how it's measured, that human beings only use like a fraction, or like, let's just say percentage,
about 10%, 8% roughly.
Of, I don't even know what that means. Their brain power, like, I don't know how that's measured. Is it Kelvin, watts, kelvins, miles per hour, knots? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you can say that, then it would be ignorant to think that anything else that could even possibly be that so high upper law level, upper room level, because you don't know the other 90%. And the 90% is a lot.
Yeah. And there's also a spiritual realm too that exists within our reality that we can't see. Right. And so because our five senses can't sense that, I'm of the belief, you talked about being spiritual. When we talk about spirits, there is an absolute reality that there are spirits all around us. And when we talk about good versus evil, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and rulers and, things of higher in heavenly places. And so there's absolutely spirits. And so I think as people ask this question of, are we in, are we experiencing some altered reality? I think that all of those forces, with the changing environment here, with our senses as it relates to what we can see, hear, feel, and touch, and then also that spiritual reality, I think there's this questioning that's necessary. And I think that anybody, going back to your point about the percentage of our brain power that we use, I think that it's silly to not question everything. And I think you should interrogate all of those ideas and then come with your own conclusions. But I'm of the belief, like you, man, I think that the reality that we sense is only a part of it because of the spiritual existence as well.
I watched a very interesting short on this and it talks about dimensions, and it breaks down a one dimension versus two dimension versus three dimension versus four dimension, and it explained it in such a simple, profound way, in that it said, you have no idea what you're not seeing, because you like, for us, for example, we're three-dimensional, right? We live in a three-dimensional, but we don't know what that fourth dimension looks like. So therefore, we have no comprehension of it. To us, it is in front of us, but because we aren't equipped to see it or hear it or experience it, I can't even say hear it or see it or any of that, because it goes beyond those senses, right? It's a higher level sense that we don't even have the faculties to control, right? And if we did, would we even be able to survive them, right? As a species, or whatever you want to call it. So it explained that if you're two-dimensional, you don't even think about three-dimensional, because you can't see it or even understand it, because you don't have the faculties to. For us, we have no way of understanding that. So I think a person is very obtuse when they just simply could say, oh yeah, there's a lot of research and stuff that points to that fact. But then if you weigh in the fact that we only have 90% or 10% control over our mental faculties, how could you even possibly make a statement like that when you don't even know what the other 90% of your brain power can interpret in the physical universe around us? We don't even understand the universe. We think we do, right? And even Elon Musk said it the other day. He's like, well, this calls into question, and he said it at the same time with the simulation argument, because he is a big proponent of that, right? But he said, we might have to rework the thing. Does the universe even end? Did it begin? How did it start? All of those different things. Is even really 13 billion or whatever it is years old that they say, right? They, right? They say, is the world flat? All that stuff, right? So,
we don't know. And that's the thing that I think that you're really bringing up, is the fact that we have no idea how much is out there that we don't know. And I think, going back to your point about just this whole idea of living in a simulation and all of these things, there was a question, you talked about shorts earlier. I saw another short that was really interesting. They asked, I don't remember what if it was Grok or Chat GPT, it was one of the AIs, and it said, what is the probability that a single cell organism could evolve into a species that's sentient and, society and all of that? And the number that it gave was astronomical. So the interpretation that I got from that is that it's so much more rational to believe there's a higher being and a higher power, as opposed to this random act of creation, because there is no evidence in which something came out of nothing. There's no evidence in which some event happens and something is created. We have lots of evidence that things are destroyed and things change form, but we don't have any evidence that something spontaneously happened from nothingness. And so I think that it's easier to posit that there is a God as opposed to not. So we could talk about that for a long time as well, but
I just don't understand how you could have creation without creator.
Exactly.
Because it goes against the law of the natural existence, right? Anything that you look at is created for something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree. And because of that, I think that there has to be, because, we talk a lot about black versus white. We talk a lot about Republican versus Democrat. I think this is the conversation between creation and spirituality, or beliefs in a higher power, or science versus, religion, if you will. I don't like to use the word religion, because I think so much has been infiltrated, as opposed to, this whole notion of what it is to believe in God and Jesus and so on and so forth. And I think that it's important to understand that there are multiple angles of truth that we need to explore. Like, I believe, there's certain people who believe in the creationists that say the earth is only 6,000 years old. But there's also some people who believe in God that believe that the earth is billions of years old. And I think that it bears exploring both of those possibilities without coming to some conclusion to say one or the other is right or wrong. And so, when you look at the Bible, when you look at in the beginning, we as human beings look at it in terms of time, but the word beginning does not necessarily denote a specific origin of time, because if you believe in God, God always existed. So how can you have a being that always existed eternally and place that eternal being in these confines of time? It's not possible. And so I think that's where some of the difficulties come, because we try to use our language and our understandings and our dimensions and all of those to describe certain things that are unexplainable, at least right now.
Right. Which again, I guess would take us into what we can really look at right now in today's climate, in today's world, which, obviously very sad, and we're going to talk about it today, which was understanding and trying to gain understanding, right? And then obviously rationale behind everything that goes on. And obviously there's, no secret, today, and I felt compelled, you felt compelled to talk about this today. I know everyone's talking about it. It's pretty much the hottest thing as far as topic of news. It's the hottest thing. But obviously we're going to talk today about, and unpack the Charlie Kirk assassination, because I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of understanding and rationale and tribal actions and human actions that are happening right now, and just different things about that precedent, because it's definitely evolving and morphing into something that I don't think a lot of people expected. But I think there's a lot of people that are cheering it on and going, okay, I think we're heading in the right direction with the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which I would say and argue is probably, this is probably that moment in time for those who were around when JFK was assassinated, and for those who were around when Dr. King was assassinated, and for those who were around when, RFK was assassinated, and so on and so forth. Those moments in time, Abraham Lincoln, right? That's a long time ago, but I almost feel like this assassination, because it's in such the modern era of digital technology, news information, all of these different things, I think that this is probably the most widely known or most widely felt on all levels in the history of assassinations in America, simply because we're in an era right now where, I don't know, to me at least, it looked like it. I watched and seen the whole thing happen live. And I remember I got off a meeting and my wife says, "What's going on right now on TikTok?" And I went, "What?" And she tells me, and I look, "Is Charlie Kirk getting shot at?" And I went, "No." And I look on Fox News and all this stuff, and nothing. And all of a sudden it just starts to pop. Shooting reported at OREM. And I get on X, and I saw the whole thing unfold live on X. The thing that struck me about it was, and I'm 44, there was no traditional TV, media, anything. This was the first time that we saw a massive national, international event happen, and it was completely uncovered or completely broadcast via social media and people with their phones. And I think that we're at a tipping point in America right now, or I believe we were at a tipping point in America, right? We're at a tipping point. And I want to say, I believe that what I've seen so far is, I want to say it's definitely tipping in one direction. I think it's definitely tipping in one direction. And we can open that up for conversation right now, but I think it's tipping in a direction that I don't think a lot of people thought it was going to tip in. But the first massive or major assassination since Dr. King, and before that, the Kennedys. Len, what the heck is going on, man?
Man, it's such a very deep, multi-layered idea to unpack, because I'm sure somebody who will watch this in the future will say, well, what about the couple that was assassinated in Minnesota? What about all of the kids that were shot at those different schools? And I think that all of those are true as well. I think the reason why Charlie Kirk is getting so much coverage is because he was a polarizing, outspoken figure. And I think that what's happening, as I see it, is that it really uncovered some of the lack of progress that we've made in the country. And I don't know how you're unpacking. I'm very interested to hear what you were thinking was going to be the outcome of this, because I think we probably will see it from through a different lens, but I believe that we agree on many of the points that we're going to talk about. But anyway, having said all of that, what I mean by the fact that I think that it uncovered some things is that you had one congresswoman who, when she thought that it was a certain group or a certain type of individual, she had this indignant response. But then when she found out that at the time, in real time, finding out that that person didn't have those preconceived labels, her approach completely changed and her energy and her vitriol changed. And I think that it's so important, especially given the timing. Right now, a man was shot 5 days ago. A husband was killed 5 days ago. A father was killed 5 days ago. I think there's a time and a place to have conversations about the caricature of Charlie Kirk and who people thought he was based on maybe secondhand or third-hand information. I think that it's time to take a step back and just to reflect on the fact that he was a human being that didn't deserve to be killed, regardless of his political leanings, regardless of his philosophies, regardless of the things that he said that may have been objectionable. And also, we have to understand that as a human being, he was a good father, a good husband, as we saw it from the outside looking in. His wife spoke very eloquently about who he was. I saw a couple of other clips from people who actually knew him and people who fit other profiles other than what you would say. Like I saw a black gay guy speaking positively of Charlie Kirk. And when you look at it from the outside looking in, you wouldn't necessarily think that someone who fit those other boxes would be a person who would speak so highly of him. And so I just think that people right now are entrenching in their different camps. And I hope that the God and Charlie and the Jesus that Charlie prescribed to love will be ultimately what becomes the focal point, that we need to get back to being loving, caring, kind people who operate through the golden rule, is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, not do unto others as they would do unto you. There's a big difference between those two things. And so I could say a whole lot more, and I will say a lot more, but I just want to pause just to say, you know what? We need to just take time to take a beat and to understand that a man was killed, and people are killed every day. And yes, we do give different weight to different people, although we all are the same in God's eyes. But for the sake of public discourse, we bring this up because of the fact that there are so many people that have an opinion about him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as far as, where we put the weight, and there's do we assign assassination to just a singular person? You know what I mean? Whereas like a group loss of life, such as, it's like school shootings, stuff like that. Is that like, that's a school shooting? We don't necessarily say that's an assassination. I think I think that this could be categorized as an assassination simply because they were deliberately taken out because the opposing voice or the opposing viewpoint could not beat them at that game, at the game of debate, at the game of life, at the game of research, at the game of critical thinking, at the game of morals, ethics, values, all of those things. It's the same thing as putting a cork in the middle of my baseball bat. Right now, obviously, it's an extreme level, right? We're talking about corking a bat versus killing somebody, but it's still, you have to cheat, right? And that's the ultimate form of cheating, which is you have to. This person scared you so much, the opposing that camp so much that the only remedy that we have is we got to kill him. We got to martyrize him in some way. Well, maybe not martyring him was the hopes, but I think he's becoming a martyr, right? I don't think that was the intended hope of it. I don't think that was. I think it was. I think that it was maybe an opportunity to revive that ideology or stoke the flames or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's so many different theories out there, but at the end of the day, they couldn't beat that opposing side couldn't beat them. Couldn't beat him at any measurable game. So they had to resort to that last and final way to cheat, to win. And I think what it is when we look at somebody like Charlie Kirk and why it's such a massive impact or why we put the value on it, so to speak, or the attention on it, Len, is exactly that word, value. This person, I think, was such a high person, individual, human being of value. And what I mean by that is not to diminish anyone's value, because I know we live in a world of hypersensitivity where we're like, everyone's equal. I wish we would stop saying that, because it's a freaking lie, dude. Everyone is not equal. We're not. I am never going to be able to play basketball the way Kobe Bryant played basketball. God rest his soul. I am never, ever going to be able to debate the way Charlie Kirk did. God rest his soul. I'll never be able to engineer the way Elon Musk does. I just won't. I just won't. We're not created equal. So I wish we would stop saying that we're created equal, because we're not. Now we're created equal under God in his sight, right? And we're created equal as we're all human beings and we all operate the same way, but we're all geared to do certain things and we're all geared to operate a certain way. And to say we're all equal in our capacity is just absolutely, I think, a lie, because not everybody's made to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's made to be a salesperson. Some people just want to break rocks, and they're happy doing that. I think the problem is that Charlie Kirk was such a high person of value to such a large amount of people that his impact is very felt. I don't think it's about popularity. I think that when you look at Charlie Kirk, and maybe this is what upset a lot of people, I think Charlie Kirk was the complete 100% kryptonite antithesis of the left woke ideology that is just spreading all over the world right now. The you don't need to be married, you don't need to have kids, you don't need to have God in your life, you don't need to be disciplined. I mean, there's so many people that are dinks now today. You know what a dink is, right? Dual income, no kids. Like it's a point, right? It's we can go on vacation wherever we want. We can travel. So I think that he was such the epitome of the and was such the antithesis of everything that is on the one side of things today in today's world, that's why it's so hard. It's so massively felt. Because realistically, he was the champion of the family marriage ideology. I don't think anybody else champions it the way he does or did. That's why it's so felt, I think.
I think that when you look at what he represented and the reason why people are up in arms about what happened to him is something that we need to unpack. So you talked about, they didn't want what he represents. The way I look at it is that it was Tyler Robinson who made the decision to get up, plan, carry out, get a gun, and shoot that man and kill him. And I think it's and again, I'm not saying this towards you, so I want to be very careful that you don't take it that way. I think that we have to be very careful in conflating one person's actions into an ideology that represents a group of people, because it would suggest that a group of people would have been willing to take that gun and shoot it. And I'm not saying that there aren't people within the left that you refer to who would not have been willing to pick up a gun. There'd probably be a long line of people who'd be willing to pick up that gun and shoot him the way that Tyler Robinson did. But it was one person's actions. And I think we've got to be very careful, especially right now, because what happens is when emotions are high, intelligence is low, and you and I, regardless of what happens, we're always going to stay in a logical space because we've understood through the lessons that we've learned and through the wisdom that we've experienced in our lives, how to stay calm and level-headed regardless of how we feel about a certain circumstance. Unfortunately, there are large numbers of individuals who allow their emotions to get the best of them to take action that is hurtful to other people, and in this case, deadly to somebody else. And I just think that when we take that action of that individual and we put that on a whole group of people, I think that becomes very, very, very dangerous. And I think that's how the stoke of fear and the stoke of war begins to start getting flames and creates more variables to create a tinderbox. And I'm concerned that the loud left and the loud right, because they speak the most and they have the loudest megaphones, that the people like us in the middle who don't believe that even though they disagree with somebody, they deserve to be taken out, we've got to be very careful to become a louder majority, because those thoughts of those fringe people don't reflect our beliefs and our values. Not between me and you, because I know you. I know your family. I know your mom. You know what I mean? Like, you know me, you know my family, and you know that neither of us reflect those views. And I think that more people that reside center left and center right need to become more outspoken without finger pointing to the terrible actions of an individual.
I think you make a great point in that I want to touch on, but before I do touch on that point, and because I want to wrap it up with that point, I do agree, and I would normally agree with a group not being associated with a lone actor's actions. But at the same time, the part that makes me a little worried about it is in that I think that that's normally the way it would work in America, and that's normally the way we would hope it's to work, is that the actions of that single person don't necessarily represent a pool of people where there's like a blood-brain barrier bleed, right? Where all of a sudden we have a group of people that are in that camp. But the shocking thing to me is that as this was happening, and as it did happen and post it happening, 24, 40 hours later, there was just a massive group of people that fit that ideology. They were openly celebrating in a very similar way.
That's true.
Online,
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Right? What I think the difference here now, though, is that, and this is where it's kind of weird, is after it all happened, the night it happened, after it happened, still to this day, everyone was angry, shocked, and upset in his camp or in that side. And you knew that, and everyone was looking at that camp. But what did they do? They prayed. There were prayer vigils overnight everywhere. There were prayer vigils all around the country.
Okay.
Which you saw, right?
Yes, I did see that.
You didn't see violence. You didn't see mass rioting, burning the streets. You didn't see any of that. Okay, fine, cool. But what I think you saw that's different here is that there are people that are on the other side of the aisle that are right-leaning that flip the script on a lot of these people and screenshotted it and reported them. And now there's this big thing. I don't know if you've seen it or not, all over social media, where there are people that posted that stuff about, or if they posted celebratory stuff about the assassination of Kirk, and those people screenshot it, they reported it to their employers, their businesses, whatever, and like boycotts of business owners, if that was you that posted negatively about it. Or there are people now that are crying, I didn't mean it, that got fired from their jobs. Because what happened was that there are people in the right side of camp that flipped the script on those in the left side and canceled them. Because they watched them doing during COVID, and you saw that happen. But it was like kind of like there wasn't anything different. There wasn't any reaction that happened from the other camp that was different, other than we gave you your taste your own medicine with cancel culture, right? And we prayed and we were peaceful and there was no riots after it. But
okay, so I gotta jump.
Go ahead, because I have one more. Okay, I got one more point. I got one more point to make on it.
All right.
And I think that this is the biggest issue, and I think that this is the biggest problem, and it goes hand in hand with what you said. Having said that, we saw that, we've seen that, but the biggest problem I think here is that for anybody watching here is that this is all bullshit.
Okay.
And what we need to pay attention to is that yes, when the media, when the news, when everything says and puts the stuff out there, they always show us the fringe of that one side, right? So I see the fringe of the left and the fringe of the right. But in reality, what I don't think most people know is that your neighbor wants the same that you want, more than you think it.
Right.
And we can't believe in what they say here and what they say here. We have to believe in, dude, if you're in America, you want a nice place to live in a safe community. You can go out to eat. You can go see movies. You can go spend time with your kids. You can raise them. You don't have to worry about no BS. You can unlock your doors at night. You can stay out till the street lights are on. You can go to a park at night. You could do these things and not worry about ill will towards you in any way. And I think that's what the majority of Americans want, whether you're Democrat or Republican or liberal or whatever. And I think that's what we lose sight of, is the fact that we just love thy neighbor regardless of whether or not you believe or you relate to them or not, or you are in the same camp as them, whether you're vegan or not. It doesn't matter. Love them, and love them for the fact that they're different from you. And that's really all there is to it. So I think that's what most people lose sight of. But I think that we saw the opposite. I think a lot of people thought there was going to be a lot of violence, and we didn't see that. I thought there was, at least, and we didn't. I don't think we have seen a lot of violence as a result.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. So the first belief, and I think like by the time this gets out, our conversation may be off because there may be new information. Because as recently as a couple of hours ago, so there was the belief, okay, so this guy, he was 22 years old. His father is a police officer. Their family is Mormon. And so it goes against what people would have traditionally thought the perpetrator was, because the first belief is that the perpetrator was trans. And now it's coming out that there may be some connections because of the roommate and all of that stuff. We need to do some more investigation to find out what's the latest and what's real versus what's not. So you talked about rioting, and I think that it's very important to understand that rioting is not a right thing or a left thing. It's just, it's the reality is that riots is really the way that the unheard. There's a quote by Martin Luther King. He says that riot is the language of the unheard. And now when you talk about rioting or peaceful protesting, they both serve different purposes. And it's never okay to hurt people. It's never okay to destroy property. I want to be very, very, very clear about that. I also understand that when you talk about this idea that, the right or whoever, the response was different. Well, the reality is this: in Huntington Beach, there was a group of white supremacists that were out protesting, and this was before it came out who the person was. And the very next day, 8 historically black colleges and universities had to close down because they didn't know because there were threats of violence against those schools before they found out who the perpetrator was. So unfortunately, those stories don't get leaked on the right. Unfortunately, the fake news doesn't report those types of incidences, unfortunately. And so I think anybody who feels that they're unheard, and when I say anybody, I'm talking now about groups of people, how sociologically groups of people respond and react when they aren't heard. Some groups of people resort to violence, killing, assassinating, rioting, tearing down property and things like that. That happens on both sides of the aisle. And so, yes, I understand that the response in this instance wasn't rioting on the streets, but I think it's, the response was based on the fact that rioters typically riot when they have made petitions and they've expressed their anger and it wasn't heard, and legislation is made and decisions are made and they feel powerless. And the only way they can be heard is to protest and to riot. But again, there were responses, and that my community felt. My sons went to 2 of the schools that were put on lockdown. They had to close the school down because of credible threats that there could be some type of activity there. And so I just think that it's so important to not point fingers, because both sides of the aisle has good and evil. Both sides of the aisle has, good things that they do to respond, and terrible, evil things that they do in response. And so I just really, really wanted to point that out.
It's interestingly enough, and you're right. I'm surprised. I don't doubt that. I mean, I didn't hear about it, and I'm not even doubting that I would happen. I'm not even surprised. I'm not even surprised that would happen. Mm-hmm. I think there was a school shooting that happened like an hour or something after that.
It was going on, yes, during that time. Yes, right? That would have been headline news. You're right.
Headline news, right? So that was Correct. Going on at the same time. But what I do think though is that the overwhelming majority response of it was not as crazy as I thought it was going to be. And I remember looking at the stuff online, and I remember seeing certain people post that were in that camp that went, "You have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea." And I'm like, dude, please, we don't need this shit right now, because you never know what could spark civil unrest in a mass way, in a modern way that we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. And we are at a point right now where it could have happened there. And that could have been a tipping point moment, but I think it tipped in a direction where people went, crap, man, we can't get away with this shit anymore. We can't get away with this crap. We can't get away with bullying anymore. These guys on the other side are going to stand up for themselves. They're playing this own game. But I think getting back to the most important thing about it is that there was no chance for the media to immediately propagandize this, because there was no media covering it.
Sure.
They weren't there. But 3,000 kids were there with their phones, and we saw that. But what I do think, what we did see happen here, is that we do see the media trying to spin it now, and the media trying to utilize it now. But I think, again, at the core of it all is people need to really understand that this is not normal for America, meaning this isn't something that we shouldn't look at and go, guys, like, we need to understand why we failed as a society, where we would even allow for a second someone to think that it'd be okay to do that to someone who was nonviolent in their approach.
What would you say was
across?
What would you say was not normal about that? About that action? I want to understand what you're saying. Are you saying that the fact that somebody would take a gun and shoot an innocent person was not normal? What do you mean?
Well, I don't think it's normal. I don't think it's like, for example, I think the majority of people or understand or know you have that feeling when like the first time you were ever with like friends as an adolescent and you saw someone steal something like out of like a drugstore or a convenience store, you felt like that feeling. You feel a feeling of like, oh, it's not right. Mm-hmm. You know it, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Look, I'm not even going to pretend. It's that same feeling of whenever, and I don't think anyone's ever excused from this, but I think every living person on the planet Earth has at one point had some type of suicidal thought or thought about something, right? Mm-hmm, I'm not lying here. I know I'm not the only person, right?
For sure.
Please know I'm okay, all right?
Yes, right. But you have to emphasize that nowadays, though, for real.
I'm okay, right? So I don't think that anyone's abstained from that, but you have like you have this barometer that goes right that brings you back. So I think most people, the majority of people have that barometer. It's not normal. So for you to actually think about it, know about it, pre-plan it, you knew he was going to be there that day and speak that day. You knew how to get up on top of the building. You rehearsed it, went through the whole thing, shot that. Look, he had to have had experience with that, a 30-06 bolt action hunting rifle. It's one of the easiest, most popular rifles to use. But again, at the same time, if you've never used a bolt action gun rifle, then it's a little confusing. But
there are pictures of him since he was,
he's had experience with it.
For sure.
So I think about unfolding this, right? Like there are so many thoughts in your head that could have said, no, come back. But you felt it and you went through that. And I understand too, at the same time, Len, that I have to process this through the lens of a lot of things won't make sense to me because they're not supposed to make sense to me because that's not normal to me in my operating system or in my
yeah. And it's not normal paradigm. To you, but the question is it normal? Because you just talked about the fact that the same day there was a school shooting and nobody heard about it. Go ahead.
I'm going to pack it up. I'm going to pack it up for you.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure.
No. I'm going to pack it up because it's not normal. It's not normal because it doesn't happen on a daily basis or a monthly basis. But I think what's happening here, and this is just my thoughts on this, is that, again, he is fitting. I don't know who the school shooter was, right? Okay. But he's fitting this profile again. The shooter is fitting this profile that we keep seeing all the time. And I think what the problem here is, again, he rehearsed this and he had to go. And if you shot a gun, you know what I'm talking about. You get what I'm saying? And that's a very he iron shotted that or scoped it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's a very personal thing.
Yeah. And I think that, go ahead. I know you're unpacking.
It's just, you had to have had some. So here's my thoughts. Mm-hmm. Because this guy fits the profile. Young, confused, male. Okay. We're in this point of life right now. And I know this might not be popular and it's just my theory. And again, this is the thing that everyone has to understand. And the point of yours and I's conversation, Len, is that this is just a conversation about your viewpoint and my viewpoint, because at the end of the day, we want to put our viewpoints together to create a pragmatic solution to the world's problems. This is how we're supposed to grow as a species. This is how we've grown and survived as a preeminent species. Okay? We are confusing children so much today with this shit. Sorry, I said it twice, and I don't want to say it, but we are confusing children so much with this crap today that we have three brains. We have reptilian brain, midbrain, and high brain. And that reptilian brain is in war today with the high level brain, because the high level brain is being taught and being influenced things that the reptilian brain is hormonally driven by, that is going, no, 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 no. Case in point, I understand the whole transgender thing. I understand it. I have a really good friend of mine whose their son, daughter is transgender. I get it. I've watched it. I've seen it personally. At the end of the day, the only reason why these kids are so mad and angry and confused is because their hormones are fighting with their brain and the shit they're being, third time, I'm sorry, Len, crap they're being taught at school that tells them these things that are conflicting with their hormonal brain, their reptilian brain, and then they put them on antidepressants. Don't know if the suspect is in on it. This is a general conversation. Antidepressants and ADHD drugs that have proven side effects to create rage and anxiety and anger and depression. So not only are we educationally confusing these kids, but then we're disciplinarianly confusing them, because we're not reinforcing good behavior, reinforcing bad behavior, alt behavior. And then on top of that, we put them on drugs because they have conditions, and then those drugs have side effects that create the very thing we're trying to avoid. That, I think, is what's causing a lot of the problems in the youth of America today. Outside of the fact that they have more bad influences than they ever have had access to, and less positive influences, because we're busy spending the money on the baby boomers.
Where did that come from? But no.
Because 60% of the national budget goes towards entitlement and social programs.
Yes. Okay. So
baby boomers.
Interesting. You brought that one back. And for those of you who don't know what that reference was, that was in episode 6 and 7. So go back to it and check it out so you'll understand where his rage is coming from.
That was your college degree, knowing what episodes there was, Rain Man.
Because it stood out so much to me. But let's talk about the shooting. And you mentioned that it's not normal. And I want to pose a question to you that I don't really know how I feel, but I'm feeling some kind of way about gun control. And I don't want to turn this into an either or I'm, for guns or against guns, because I think that the country was founded on the idea of the Second Amendment. And I believe in that. And I believe that a person has the right to bear arms. And I believe that a person should have the right to defend him or herself against the government and against harm that could come their way. When I listen to the news and I see different stories and I read about different incidents where so many people are killed by gun violence, when you look at the number of children that are killed by gun violence, when you look at the number of school shootings, when you look at the number of maladjusted people that take their rage and their anger out on other people, when you look at just how many people get access to a gun that has no reason to have a gun, when you have the types of artillery out there that can inflict so much harm that has nothing to do with either hunting or protecting your household from some person coming in and invading your space, I think we've got to really have an in-depth conversation, because unfortunately, I disagree with your notion that somebody taking a gun and shooting somebody else is not normal. It's not something that happens every day, but the statistics are really, really unfortunate. When you look at America, America has some of the most impactful and deadly and most ongoing gun violence in the world when you talk about individuals taking the life of somebody else. And so what are your thoughts about gun violence and then also just the whole idea of gun ownership and what guardrails, if any, should be placed on those from your perspective?
So I think that I want to draw a distinction between gun violence and assassinations.
Okay.
This was an assassination. This is not normal.
Okay. Just for a quick point of clarification, because I think that's a good point. Okay. But a person who takes a gun and goes to a school because there may have been a group of kids who disagreed with.
That's not normal. That's not normal either.
I agree with that, but the occurrence is so often nowadays. It's crazy. So assassinations of that type, or one individual who's a public figure.
Gun violence of that type. Violence of that type.
Okay, gotcha. So I just want to understand where you're coming from, but I wanted to interject so I could track what you're talking about. So go ahead, Chris.
Right. It's a good point. Now, I'm torn on that situation too, because again, I'm pragmatic in my thinking. So again, I see things like this and I go, shoot, man, gun control, right? Gun control. But at the same time, I go, dog pig, because at the end of the day, I can never see, because this is why having the right to bear arms is so important, and why we can't take that power away from the individual, even though we see crap like this.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that. I want you to know that.
No, I understand that. I understand that. You're way too educated to understand, or to not to understand that, right? To be ignorant of that fact. You understand that. The problem that I see with it all the time, Len, is that we would rely on the virtues of a group of people that would still possess firearms. And for them to have that power, and them to only have that power, we're relying on the human nature and the virtue of those people not to ever, you get what I mean?
Yes.
I would not be okay with waking up. Like, I could never live in a country that you are not allowed to own a firearm personally, because you have a group of people that can possess firearms that you can't, that supposedly work for you, and supposedly are supposed to be public servants for you, but have authority over you and are already in a position of authority for you. And they know that they now have a trump over you, that it just gives too much power to one group of human beings to abuse it. So
I agree with all of that.
And I know you do. I know you do. And that's the problem where I'm like,
should there be guardrails? Because how many people are going out there that have mental health challenges, that have been questioned by either school authorities or have some type of rap sheet of some type? And there should be some guardrails on this whole idea of gun ownership, because just like gun ownership and cars are a right, they're not a privilege. They're a privilege, they're not a right. And I think that each person who has some type of deadly weapon, vehicle, whatever, should go through a rigorous set of examinations or some type of hurdles to be able to get access to that. I'm sorry, not everybody that has a gun should have a gun.
This is where the advent of AI makes me excited. This is where I get excited by AI, and here's why. Okay, I agree with you, because here's another common denominator that at least I see that points out to me instinctually as I see these types of gun violent activities. Does it me, or does it, a lot of these seem to always be law enforcement backgrounds, military backgrounds, or some type of gun enthusiast background? Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about? Like, for some reason, the shooter had the parents were law enforcement. That seems to be a common denominator. So yes, and why I'm saying that, whether that's true or not, I believe that the level of scrutiny does need to be greater in order to keep that freedom, simply because there's just no other organized way right now to make it, to change the crap that's going on educationally, to prevent again, what I think is the rage of these young people doing this because they're so confused. You're getting bullied and you're getting this and you're getting that because they're so confused. So number one, yeah, this is why AI is so exciting to me because yes, AI can solve that gap because there's a manpower gap to really. Len Cooper wants a 30-06. Cool, Len. We need the IDs and the birth certificates of everyone in your household. When's the last time everyone had a physical? When's the last time? Yes, it's a pain in the ass, and yes, it's going to be horrific, and yes, I get it. I'm so anti-red tape and so anti-regulatory.
And privacy, too.
And privacy, too. I can't stand any of this crap. Like, I'm tearing up.
Yeah.
But to me, I'd rather have... Every year, I got to do registration for your vehicles. Every year, you got to go for an annual physical. I'm sorry, but maybe bi-monthly or bi-annually or something. Maybe put it to the vote of the people. You need to go in for your gun. You need to re-register. You need to get re-registered. I'm sorry, dude, but guess what? It makes sense because you know what? 5 years ago, I had a perfect marriage, and today I caught my wife cheating, and I'm in a mental state where I want to murder somebody, and I have a gun. Hello,
yeah.
That's why AI excites me because.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I agree with that. I just think that creates so many challenges, but I agree with you that it's.
But AI solves them. AI solves a lot of those challenges because AI can think about it. I know this is weird and it's out there, but eventually one day AI, hey, I'm going to go hunting today. Hold on a second. You're mentally sound to go hunting today. Go for it.
Right.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it's just, to me, it's so rehearsed and that's so personal for him to have taken that shot and to have done that you knew it was wrong, dude. And if you didn't know it was wrong, then I blame whoever was indoctrinating you and educating you. And yes, there's probably some transgender LGBT. I'm not blaming that. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want anyone to. What I'm saying is that there is stuff out there that supposedly that's there. And then not only that, you got the bullets that say hunt down fascist or whatever it said on there. So you just have too many evidentiary points that point to the fact that this was some type of hate crime as well at the same time. Because Charlie Kirk was very outspoken against transgender and but at the same time, you couldn't beat him on the debate stage, so you had to kill him. You killed him because the very thing that you went to school for that made you think you were smart ultimately failed you in the end because that degree that you went to school for, in my opinion, is not a degree that you think you had the freedom of choice to. It's a degree that someone pushed on you so that you could get into debt. They don't care that you're going to go get a job. Schools are a racket. They're a racket. They should lose their tax exemption status. All of them. They're absolute criminal activities. They're cesspools for criminal activity because they don't care if you get a job. They care that you got your money. And they're hoping that the government does student loan bailouts. Because at the end of the day, the colleges are sitting back, Glenn, going, well, how come we can't get the same treatment that the banks got during 2008? How come we can't get the same treatments that the tech companies got? The MCIs, the Enrons, the banks, all these things got bailed out. You don't think those college campuses are sitting there lobbying the same way? Going student loan bailouts because we want the same type of treatment that the banks got and the mortgage companies got and every other company got bailed out. So we've created this problem, and then we give them a tax exemption status to allow to create these cesspools of misinformation and indoctrination that we've seen. I know it. Do you know who Bill Ackman is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen him talk on? I don't think he was on Megyn Kelly or have you seen? He's left leaning, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Did you hear how he trashed Harvard after his daughter came out and he said, my daughter is a complete wacko now, or his son? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen his comments about his daughter from Harvard, no.
He's like, I got to unbrainwash my children now. Mm-hmm. And this is someone who's left-leaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we definitely need to have a revolution in thought and in conversation and then also coming together as a country, because what's happening right now is all of these polarized camps are getting more and more entrenched in their polarization, and both sides are responsible. Both sides have blood on their hands. Both sides have some reconciliation. And I think the only way that we can begin to heal is to first acknowledge that we have some wrongdoing in this process. And until we get to that point, until we stop doing this and do more of this, then nothing's going to change. More people are going to get killed. More politicians are going to get killed. More elected representatives are going to get killed. More people, because nobody talks about the fact that, people that end up, in the LGBTQ community get harassed and beat up oftentimes, and they get humiliated so much so that they end up taking their own lives. And so again, every reaction that people have is typically as a result of some type of lived experience. And so the reason why a lot of people from that camp are acting out right now is because of the fact that they haven't been heard. And so I'm not saying at all that I agree with the lifestyle, but you got to love the person. If you ever have a church that says you have to not come into my doors because you're trans, you need to walk away from that church the next day, the right then and there. And so also, for me, I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat, as I've mentioned before, but man, I have major issues with both of those parties right now because they're doing too much of this. And as a country, we're starting to do too much of this. We're not taking personal accountability. My life is governed by personal responsibility and accountability. I'm not a victim. Do people from my group have challenges? Yes, but I'm not going to, I choose not to blame somebody else for that. And so as a country, we've got to get to a place where we start to look inward to say, man, what is it in my heart that's making me dehumanize a person so much so that I can go to the top of a building, take that rifle, breathe in, breathe out, and pull the trigger and take somebody else's life just like their target practice? Where are we as a country to be able to feel that that's okay? And I'm not talking, and I know as a country, the response, I hope, will be this coming together. But still, it's not like, hey, we're coming together and having this false dichotomy of, hey, we're praying for you, when if it were somebody else, it would have been, how dare you? Who are you? And let's go and lock this person up. There's got to be the same energy both ways. And the way to do that, take personal accountability and responsibility.
Quote, right? Here's Bill Ackman in quote. Ready?
Yeah.
He said he felt like she had been indoctrinated into a cult of anti-capitalism. And this is a guy that's Democratic donor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Democrat, and pays all this money. By the way, I mean, all this money to him is nothing. I mean,
oh yeah, he's a hedge fund manager.
I mean, the guy is massive, right?
Yes, I get it.
So pay all this money to send your daughter to Harvard, and then she comes out and you go, holy crap, she got indoctrinated, and you're left-leaning.
Yes, I think though, okay.
So here's the problem.
Yeah.
That gun was a direct reflection of the hate and the anti-pragmatic and the anti-progressive and the anti-solution and the lack of a better word that I'm looking for, productive or sustainable thesis that is taught in college today. These kids come out and they probably go, I'm screwed. And they look at a guy like Charlie Kirk and they go, it's his fault because these guys over here that taught me all these things told me that's the enemy, and that's the reason why my college education isn't working. My hard-earned college education and my beliefs that my professors taught me and all the stuff I learned in school, college kids today know more about Marx than they knew about Will Smith or even Milton Friedman, for that matter. They know more about Karl Marx than they knew about Ben Franklin. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. We know and I'm not saying you shouldn't know your enemy, because it is your enemy. That is your enemy. The enemy of the world is communism and socialism. That's the enemy of the world.
The enemy of the world is ignorance. The enemy of the world is true. And I think to your point, I think that social media should be more heavily scrutinized, because here's the thing. We get more knowledge and information from this than we get at all from all of the professors and all of the books they assign nowadays. Because I can tell you, man, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in school. I've seen, I've been to, a very liberal school. I've been to a more conservative school, and I've been in schools somewhere in between. And I can tell you that social media and getting into echo chambers has done more to polarize people than any other vehicle. There should be a call to arms for being in a position as a society where we need to hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable for the type of information that gets disseminated. Because in colleges, the kids that are there, they're online, and the teachers that are the professors, they're also online. And oftentimes what's happening at these schools is it's a product of the people that are there, and they're a product of the information they're placed inside. And I don't care what anybody tells me until something else shows me otherwise, is that I purposefully on my phone, I purposefully search out both sides of all things, because I don't want to be sucked in an echo chamber. I want to hear, for example, I'm glad that in my phone, I was able to get a story about Charlie Kirk from Candace Owens. Candace Owens and I probably don't see eye to eye on many topics. I didn't know that she and him were friends, and they grew up, in the space together, and was in the same nonprofit that he started together, and that they traveled on the road and all of the difficult challenges they faced together. And she saw him for his humanity, and she gave us a peep behind the curtain that would have come across differently than if it was his wife, because of course a wife is going to only say glowing things about somebody. Had I not been on both sides of my algorithm, I would have not even been exposed to that. And so I also saw people who were making fun of his death. I saw people who were saying, oh, he had it coming to him. No, nobody has death coming to them because of an idea they espouse. I'm sorry. Nobody does, regardless of that individual. Because here's the thing. If you are a believer, you know that any act that anybody does outside of blasphemy is forgivable. It can be forgiven. Now, there has to be a change of heart. There has to be a change of action that corresponds with that goes along with that. But anybody's actions, beliefs, assumptions are all forgivable. So because of that, everybody has a shot to redeem them, to get redemption. And so nobody should be, regardless of how they lean differently politically, should be taken out for that. People who don't know me and people who don't know you, if they were to interact with us outside of this association that we have together on this screen, they would think that you and I would never be friends. They would think, I would imagine that some of your friends who are on the further right than you, and some of my friends who are on the further left of the spectrum than me, would never think that you and I would believe the same way we do and have conversations the way we are. But it's because of this redemptive quality that each person has, and this exchange of ideas that we need to experience, and having a debate and a platform where we can agree and disagree and come together, converge and diverge. We need to have that. And schools are places where that should be happening. And that's the reason why people going onto the campuses to spark debate. Because one thing that colleges are, they're a great place for debate. They're a great place for conversations. And we need to have a bigger, more urgent call for conversations like this. We need to have more of that.
I agree. I'm texting you something right now so you can take a look at it.
Okay.
In the spirit of this conversation that we're having right now about most people would not know that we'd be friends or whatever. But you see who's in that picture on the right side of it, right? You see who that is?
I do.
The right side of the picture?
Yeah. Absolutely.
This was, and I know that the audience can't see it, but we can explain it. Mm-hmm. But this was.
Maybe we can post it. I'll send it to our.
Yeah. This was done on November 17 of 2018. That's when that what I sent you, right? Mm-hmm. So my point in what you're saying, and we could post a picture up there, is that you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. No one would even think that, right? Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, you can look at that picture and you can see under yours and mine's leadership what type of business and what type of operation we ran. Just you could look at that picture. You could see. I mean, that's a meeting that you and I did in 2018. Right. And you know what type of meeting that is, you know, what type of day that is. That's a 12-hour day right there.
Yes.
14-hour day when you count the prep work before it, you know? So you're absolutely right. And that's the point. That's the point, because you could look at the productive value, and not only that, all those people that you see in that all have different viewpoints, but we brought value and enhance the value and the prosperity of those people's lives, regardless of what our beliefs were.
That's
and
right.
No one would know that. But at the same time, we can have a healthy discourse like this because we understand the value of your opinion and your perspective and the value of my opinion and my perspective, so that we can each take that perspective and gain perception, right? On the topics and in the viewpoints. I absolutely think this is another reason why I'm excited about AI, because imagine if there was an AI bot giving the counter argument in class at the same time that the physical, actual, real, living professor was talking.
Or
on both sides, by the way, not just a fact check, because I don't want to create an argument space, right? Or lack of a better word, or diminishing perspective. But imagine you're teaching a class on world history, and then or whatever, and then you're right leaning, and then you have the AI professor give the left perspective, and vice versa. You have the left leaning professor, which is 99.99999% of all professors in all American schools today.
I don't believe that, but go ahead. Keep going.
Sorry, I forgot to include PragerU in the statistics, right? Right, and give the same counter argument. That's why I'm excited about AI, because I think you'd have such a more enriched education, and that's the purpose of education, right? Is to enrich yourself, to enrich oneself. I think you'd have so much more of a value add to education. But I think that's why I think college as we know it is disappearing, is going to disappear. That's why I'm not really afraid of colleges and the influence they have over the populace anymore, because we're on the brink of right now where I'm going to be able to sit on the computer or sit in a group classroom like this, right? And hear simultaneously from 4 different professors on topics like this. Oh, can you repeat the lecture? Repeat the lecture. Can you repeat the lecture at 1.5 speed? Repeat the lecture one more time at 1.75. Give me the case notes on that lecture. The future of education is so much more exciting to me, makes me want to get into the education space, because AI is going to completely change the way higher law education is. And that might be something we could talk about later, because I think at the end of the day, we have too much human perspective that's going into young people's lives, that's spewing out this type of rhetoric that creates people like a Robinson to do the things that he did. because he's not being grounded the right way at home or in our schools.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing, is our schools are supposed to be grounding centers and education centers for our children, a place for our children to make relationships and to create community and to become like Len. I got a call today before I got on this podcast from an administrator at a school for one of my children's schools. And she was just going on and on about how she said, if we could duplicate your students' citizenship and their attitude, that's what we want in our school. And I went, who is this kid? Because he's this way at home, but this way. So our schools are supposed to be those types of areas, and they're not, because we're, as adults, we would be ignorant to think that we don't some way, somehow, shape, or form pass those type of ideologies or feelings or emotions onto young peoples, especially peoples that are adults, because we can't do anything because our time is sunsetted maybe, and now we got to vicariously pass that type of rhetoric on to the next level up, coming up, because we're invalidated or we're unseen. And I think that that's what's happening in schools too, and or maybe not even in school, at home, and it's like, I got to carry the torch because this injustice, because those types of things motivate individuals to do things.
Yeah. I think there's too much schooling
on both sides, by the way, too, Len. On both sides, not just the left. The right has done very massive atrocities too. Let's not forget that Hitler was a fascist, was this extreme rightism or whatever you want to call it, and that guy did some severe shit in the world. Sorry, fourth time. I'm gonna.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're filling up the profanity jar today.
the jar. But it's a good word. It's a good word, right? But at the same time, I think that's what's going on.
I want to talk about really quickly, piggyback on your point about education, because what I was going to say is that there's too much schooling and there's too little education. And I think what happens is that when we have people who are not educated, and when I say educated, I'm not talking about, like, for example, Chris, even though you didn't go to college, you are an educated man. So what I'm saying is that there's this belief that someone who's had more schooling is more educated, and that is not necessarily true. So what the other issue is that when you have a society of people here in America, I'll speak in particular, that are not educated, critical thinkers, we are lazy and allow people to do the thinking for us. And I believe that what's happened is this lazy approach to understanding the world around us has allowed us to rely on our politicians to speak on our behalf. And so when we watch the news, when we listen to political pundits, when we listen to politicians, and that goes from the local assembly person all the way up to the president of the United States, they allow us to be manipulated. They manipulate us through words, through psychology, and through behavioral manipulation, because we don't have the idea, and we lack the courage, and we lack the tenacity to interrogate what's being said to us. And so we just accept what sounds okay to us, that feels right and aligns philosophically with where we are, and we allow ourselves to be duped. And both sides, whether you're rich or poor, we're all being played. And we need to understand that we need to educate ourselves. And because of that, I believe that in the future, as more information becomes readily available to all of us in real time for people who want to learn the truth, and that truth has more and more platforms to get out, I just think that the clock on mass manipulation is running out. And I believe that we're on a trajectory where we're going to wake up to the lies, to the words that influence our thinking, because there's so much more that's coming available, more tools that we're getting access to. And I just believe that it's a matter of time before we get to a place where somebody tries to say something manipulative. It's like, oh, I see where you're coming from. That, you know what, you're using this dehumanization process to make me think a different way, so I can laws and rules to hurt this other group of people, but you're only doing it for selfish gain. And so I believe, I want to end this conversation with this, articulating this optimism, because I believe that the future is going to be better. I believe that we as the human race globally will begin to operate with a better sense of understanding of each other. We'll begin to have places and access so that we can see different points of view, and it'll allow us to become closer. And hopefully through that process, we will begin to recognize the manipulators who are trying to play us for their own self advancement. I believe that's where we're going.
I think that nothing, and just to kind of end it up here and wrap up for today, I think that's completely 100% accurate, Len, and it just love thy neighbor, man. It goes back to that. It's as simple as that. Just love thy neighbor. You don't have to agree. You're not supposed to agree. That's what makes life exciting, is the spice and the variety. You're not supposed to agree. You're just not. That's why there's cows and chickens and fish and dogs and cats and birds and all of the things that humans like to eat, because we like variety. We just do. And for those of you who don't like variety, freeze yourself and hope to wake up in 200 years when there is no race or ethnicity if we're still all alive, because we're all going to be one color and one ethnicity anyways, because you can't stop it from happening. So, Len, as always, what a fruitful, eventful conversation. I've always enjoyed our time together, so I appreciate that. And again, if you got some value out of this conversation, you like what's going on, take a liking to us, take a subscribing to us, throw a comment, whatever. If you want us to talk about something, obviously, we're not going to be experts at what we're talking about. We're not going to be scripted at what we're talking about, but we're not going to be filtered at what we're talking about. We're just going to give you our opinions as we see it in the world, and encouragement to hopefully you give your opinion and understanding, and knowing that you could be friends and business partners with somebody and not totally agree with everything you say at the same time, and have a nice debate and conversation about it and have fun doing it. So with that being said, Len, I'll see you next week.
Take care. Till next week.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.